And I'd like to pass on the microphone now to my co-host, Dr. Rosalie Hall, and thank her also for helping put these things together, this parallel session. So with that, I leave you and I love you. So Dr. Rosalie Hall.
Good morning, everyone. I am Rosalie Hall, speaking from Iloilo. Hello to our presenters, Dr. Villanueva, Dr. Padilla, fellow Ilonggos. Dr. Belmonte has left us already, Dr. Delina, who is, I believe, still in Hong Kong, and of course, our attendees. We are now at the open forum session, and how we're going to do this is that I will solicit questions from the attendees. If you wish to raise a question, please use the raise hand button, which is available at the bottom of your Zoom panel. I will then please wait to be recognized so that we can unmute you and therefore be allowed to talk. In your question, maybe we ask that you limit the time for the question to about a minute and be very brief about it, and also identify which speaker the question is directed at. We also have a Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom panel. If you are more comfortable typing your questions, you can also do that at the Q&A. That's also an option. So we will do one round of questions. I will collect about 2 or 3. Have time for the speakers to respond to the questions, and then we will do another round from there. So I am looking at the attendee list right now. There are no raised hands at this point. Okay, let me just wait a couple of seconds here. Okay, perhaps while they are thinking about what questions to ask, I actually jotted down some questions myself and would like to pose them to the speakers. Okay. There is actually a question directed to Dr. Padilla. What is your recommendation for the contact tracing strategy in Western Visayas? This was a question posed at the Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Good morning again. Contact tracing is quite difficult right now because it all depends upon the capacity of the LGUs to do the contact tracing and hire the contact tracers. IATF has guidelines, and the DOH has managed to increase money in support of contact tracing, but still that is a bottleneck that is still present in terms of controlling the pandemic because it's still LGU based. So depending upon the capacity of the LGU, then it all improves or does not improve depending upon the capacity of the LGU. That's it.
Okay. I will also pose a question also to Dr. Padilla. You and Mayor Joy Belmonte have mentioned the importance of microdata in guiding local government response to the 19 pandemic. And I believe it was Dr. Padilla who mentioned about barangay level data. That's how micro the data needs to be. So who do you think should generate this data, and how should it be conveyed to the local government so that it can then be used as basis for effective decision making at their level?
Okay, yes, that's a good question again. I can only cite Iloilo City as one of the models because they have a real-time data management unit that is housed in the disaster office of Iloilo City. So I also help in trying to design and actually pinpoint where the particular hotspots is located that is barangay specific. So once the data comes in from a specific barangay that there's an outbreak, Iloilo City is able to map it out as to where it is, the number of vulnerable persons, how susceptible it is to other disasters. So that kind of information system is necessary in order to contain the pandemic. I'm not familiar with other LGUs yet, especially those that are rural, because they have really very few cases as of now. But the model I'm trying to promote is the one in Iloilo City, wherein there is real-time update of the data as well as layering with the other parts or other components of disaster management. Yeah, thank you, Rose.
Thank you. Still looking at the attendee list. Dr. Giselle Concepcion, PAASE President, who's with us, has a comment about a contract tracing app that was developed by University of San Agustin here in Iloilo, Center of Bioinformatics. That technology is quite available, and perhaps this could also be used by our local government as a way to inform decisions on making contact tracing more efficient. So
Yeah.
this is the place.
Yes, I agree. Yes, I agree with BP Giselle. The contact tracing apps are quite useful in terms of doing the contact tracing. The caveat there is that there are so many apps that are not uniform and they don't talk to each other. So DOH still has to come up with some interoperability mechanism for all the contact tracing to be united, so that there is a main database for all the contact tracing apps out there to come up with a more uniform system so that they can talk to each other and data can be exchanged seamlessly between one app to the other. Yeah, thank you.
Would anyone from the panel like to ask a question? Dr. Villanueva?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yeah. I'd like to ask a question to Pip, to Dr. Pip, right? To VP Giselle, and I think to all our biologists and scientists and how's this medical experts or health practitioners there. Okay. I want to know how feasible, for example, or how viable is that some kind of a campaign or a project be taken to persuade government to invest in antibiotics for specifically for a virus of this kind. The reason is because I've been, my knowledge here is limited, but from what I understand, right, you've got core elements in this virus because this H1N1 has turned into H2N2, so on and so forth, right? And if some, shall we say, base antibiotic can be at least developed, right? And then from there worked on as new viruses come up, new strains of flu come up, right? It will be more strategic. The reason why I'm asking government is because what I've read from studies is that for an antibiotic of this type, which is not used frequently, but in cases of pandemics, right? The capital outlay, the investment, will amount to billions, and private sector, right? While we do have to engage with them, will not necessarily see the benefits of this, all right, in the short term. So you do need government to be investing in this, right? Okay. To think strategically in terms of its constituency, in terms of its population. Okay. So, yeah.
I'd like Dr. Hall, Giselle here.
Yes, Ma'am Giselle.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin and Philip. So, I have given talks recently on keeping our minds open as scientists, okay, to existing therapies or prophylactics that might help in COVID in the interim while clinical trials for vaccines and drugs are ongoing. So there's a very recent article that came out on how India is handling COVID-19, and in a certain locality that is densely populated, they are actually using hydroxychloroquine in preventing severe cases of COVID-19, and it is given with zinc and azithromycin. So I don't think the issue on hydroxychloroquine is closed, and it's something that is readily available even in the Philippines. So maybe we can look into it more closely, because from a biochemist's standpoint, we know the mechanism of action of hydroxychloroquine in combination with zinc. So we're not saying that it will work in advanced severe cases of COVID-19, but in the onset or early stage, it might. Okay. I also mentioned that recently there was a paper published in the U.S. Proceedings of the National Academies of Science on BCG vaccine. Okay? In countries that have a national TB program, the incidence of COVID-19 severe cases is statistically significantly lower than in those countries where there is not a BCG vaccination program, national BCG vaccination program. So that's my contribution to your, answer to your question, Kevin. But let me also take this opportunity, Kevin, to ask you, what do you think the role of academia, scientists in different countries in the world, including America and China, in trying to get this encounters, these constructive encounters going? Okay, so I'm not just talking about the medical or the epidemiological scientists. I'm talking about the social political scientists like you and Edna and Rosalie. What would your role be? How would you reach out to your counterparts in these countries to try to help solve this problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Giselle. Perhaps maybe in addition to that, there's another question for Professor Kevin Villanueva. Regarding geopolitics, what do you think is the future of Pan-Asia in this post-COVID world? So maybe those two questions in conjunction you can respond to. Kevin? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm listening, taking down notes. Okay. Rose, okay. Thank you, Ma'am Giselle. And I missed Pip there. I was hoping Pip could make a contribution, but that's fine. I'm sure he's thinking through it at least, right? The reason why I asked that question, and I think this, I've got two here. So what can we do, right? As academics, specifically as social, political scientists and so on, right? And then the future of Pan-Asia. Did I get that right? Pan-Asia, P-A-N
yes, correct.
dash. Pan-Asia. All right. First is to just backtrack a little bit on my question for VP Giselle and former Regent Padilla there. Let's not forget that smallpox was eventually eradicated because America and the Soviet Union put in money. They helped each other, okay? And they helped the World Assembly. So I think it's naive for us to, and I don't want to be misinterpreted as simply, kicking or eschewing the state. I think it's naive for us to think about that. In fact, we need the state there. But this is where I think it's crucial that we start thinking about a different way of contesting the policies of the state. All right. And perhaps this is where I can start answering what Ma'am Giselle is asking us. What can we actually do? If we were to think about the international system where at the end of the day, those who really manage our states as political actors, then we can do very little, I think, right? But in terms of providing the data and the evidence, right, I think this is where we can begin to network. We talk about epistemic communities, right, Rose? I mean, we talk about how we can share information, okay, specifically on certain issues, right? I don't know what kind of platform, but we definitely need some kind of platform every time there is an issue of great importance. So when we think about COVID now, right, just thinking forward, how can we actually inform or try to persuade government, right? I personally think that at least when I think about the case of the Philippines, I think some kind of decentralization or devolution has got to work, okay? Some kind of lobbying. If we're going to be amending, and let me be a bit more radical here. If we're going to be amending, say, the Constitution, we've got to start thinking about how we administer, right, the apparatus of the state, say in the case of an archipelagic country such as the Philippines. I don't think we have sufficiently been thinking about the sustainability of our island. And I think what COVID has demonstrated is that we have got to be more responsible, those of us who live in separate islands, over our own resources. Right? And this is, I think this is one of the points that Dr. Delina, I don't know if he's there, right, is trying to make, right? And this actually has huge implications on the debate that we can have about federalism in the Philippines, all right? I wish we could hear from our American counterparts, but this is where we've got to seriously think about notions of federalism in an archipelagic country such as the Philippines. Because how much longer are we going, right, to be depending on policy prescriptions which are heavily skewed on the capital and not on the regions, on the provinces, and on the cities? And I think we have a responsibility as intellectuals to tell the national government that, and to tell our local government units that. What we need is a platform. This is where the challenge is. And I'm thinking in very specific terms. When you think about Taiwan, all right, and I skipped through the Taiwan question, all right, what is absolutely amazing is that this tiny island nation is able to develop every square inch of its resources. It's a hidden gem. I keep on telling myself, Singapore is a poor country, but it's rich. The Philippines is a rich country, but it's poor. Taiwan is a rich country and it's rich. Pan-Asia, right? I hesitate to think about regions, right? I think what we're going through now, all right, and I will show this because I had prepared this on the PowerPoint, but I could not get the PDF, all right, on the PowerPoint. I arrived in Taiwan on the 11th of January, all right, and the cover of The Economist was this, poles apart, okay? This was before, all right, COVID came into full swing. This is the most recent cover, the New World Disorder. Okay. When you really think of it, all right, geopolitics has not changed. States will continue to pursue power and national interest, whether it was the 11th of September, right, or now COVID, right? I think the greater implication right, is how, like I was saying, right, we can start welcoming actors such as Taiwan, right, into the playing field, because these are countries which have demonstrated resilience towards new global problems. This is, I don't think, and there's a political agenda, all right, that's inherent in that. It's not mine, but I think we have to see, right, how we're not only looking at great powers, and this is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that great powers will end, or rather will fall, but it's the whole notion that we have to put the world in the charge of great powers, when mid powers, small powers can actually help themselves. Okay, so I don't see Pan Asia panning out, right? But I see new actors, all right? I see multinational corporations, right? So I see private sectors, I see alliances, I see coalitions, I see groups. It all depends on the issue areas of the day, right? So if we can think about VP Gisela, a G7 or a G8 on as a grouping of powerful economies, why can't we think about a G3 or a G4 in terms of solving pandemics, right?
Okay. Uh, Thank you very much, Dr. Villanueva. There actually were several questions that were posed in the Q&A panel that have already been answered by him. So I am now looking again at the attendee list. In the absence of any raised hands, I will then exercise my prerogative as moderator to ask a question. I'm very interested, following up on Dr. Villanueva's point about the pandemic basically bringing to the fore the importance of food security at a micro level. So whether it be the security of communities, the security at the local government, municipal, city level, given the disruptions in the supply chain. As an archipelagic country, much of our supply at the local level is really very much dependent on this extensive supply chain that is sustained by boats and ships and airplanes. But now that that has been suspended, or at least compromised as a result of the travel bans and quarantine protocols, there has to be some kind of reckoning of how then can communities be more food secure. And for this, I'd like to pose a question to Ma'am Josie Costales. I don't know if it's been mentioned in your presentation, but how has your own business, for instance, kind of responded to these food security challenges in your own town of Mahayhay, Laguna, for instance, where your farm is located? I think that would be quite insightful in terms of figuring out ways in which local businesses and local farms have been able to kind of recalibrate their models to also respond to the food security concerns of their very own communities. Ma'am Josie?
Yes, Ma'am Rosalie. Am I clear? Can I be
Yes,
heard?
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
During the pandemic, we were able to deliver door-to-door food deliveries by having this what we called bubble logistics, meaning we deliver to Metro Manila, and in every city or municipality we have a specific third-party logistic partner, a motorcycle delivery partners, where they deliver door-to-door the specific needs of the family. So that's, in a small way, we were able to cater the food requirements of different families in Metro Manila, and that we started here in Laguna during for the first weeks of the lockdowns. So we started with Los Baños, Laguna, Santa Rosa, Biñang, Calamba, and nearby municipalities, and we were able to expand by the month of May to Metro Manila, like Quezon City, Pasay, Parañaque, Pasig, and of course, in Manila, Manila as well, because we have clients, especially the CA patients or cancer patients, and some of those who are into wellness who really need our supply. And unfortunately, most of our clients as well, the wholesaler or the big accounts, belongs to the high-end restaurants, hotels, and tourism destinations who were closed. So most of our high-end vegetables, high-value crops, were really went to compost. So having that happened, we immediately replace our production from the high-value crops to the common tao or the common vegetable requirements of our kababayan in Metro Manila. So instead of planting lettuces for salad, we then planted what we call pinakbet vegetables, the kalabasa, the okra, ampalaya, eggplant, and squash. And the most needed leafy vegetables like the pechay or kangkong. That's it. For us to survive, we really need to supply the food requirements of our kababayan in Metro Manila who are really in need of food during the lockdowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Villanueva?
Yeah, Ma'am Josie, if the Philippines, if every Filipino household were to replicate what you're doing, we would be extremely successful. Is in fighting the virus. The reason is because Taiwan is built on simply the expansion of household farming. All right.
I know, Mr. Villanueva, we were able to visit Taiwan several times, and urban gardening is always in every area. Fruits are
Yes.
even planted in the urban area in what we call this a half drum. They were able to produce several fruits and like mangoes, chico, and even tamarind. That's why
Yeah.
we replicated our Farm Tourism Association were replicated from the Taiwan Leisure Farms Association. And I really learned a lot in Taiwan Agriculture
Yeah.
Society.
And it's a shame. I think this is. I hope that our conversation will eventually get into some platform here. But this is where I'm talking to one of our colleagues at the University of the Philippines here is Dr. Wu, all right, from in Kaohsiung, right, and the our argument here is this. Why is the Philippines looking towards Europe, looking towards America, looking towards countries so far when we have to actually be looking at Taiwan as the model? Because we share the same climate, we share the
Exactly.
same. We have been blinded. We have been blinded by our own biases in our education and so on, right? And so this has got to change. This has got to change. Uh, and I think, Dr. Rose, I think the debate is moving towards that. I wish that Dr. Delina were around, because when you look at the study that he's been doing, it's actually looking into sustainability, the sustainability of the islands, which has got to be integrated into public policy, right?
I agree with you, sir.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm still here, Sir Kevin. Ma'am Rose, can I add to that? Yeah.
Yes, please, Dr. Delina.
Nice. Yeah. First, apologies for extending my time earlier. I think I spent an extra 50% of my time, so I apologize to everyone. Yeah. So following on Ma'am Josie and Sir Kevin's thoughts on self-sufficiency, COVID-19 has indeed brought to surface front and center the need for thinking about self-sufficiency. And the work on resiliency basically looks at the role of communities, of neighborhoods, of kapitbahay, kaingod mga balay, right? So the focus is on that one, and we see this panning out actually in Thailand. So moderation society is basically a development paradigm that their previous beloved king had been talking about for 20 years, way before this the gross national happiness index, this sustainable development goals have panned out internationally as a normative direction for everyone. So they have been talking about it and have actually mobilized their rural and semi-urban communities to move into self-sufficiency direction. So and I think we have to learn from that. When I was young, I think there has been a move from the government to focus on barrios, right? So focusing on food sufficiency and water sufficiency and energy sufficiency. So in this project of mine and with folks with colleagues, collaborators from UPD, we are actually looking at how we can elevate the discussion, a discourse of bringing in self-sufficiency in our islands. Again, islands are not just communities that are bounded by water. So these are also communities that are inland, like our puruks, our barrios, our barangays, our sitios. These are also islands in the metaphorical sense of things. And I think with COVID-19, the discussion has to move forward to what matters most. And during this time of seclusion, I'm currently actually locked down in our tiny barrio in South Cotabato. What matters most, I think, is family, right? And access to basic resources. Basic resources, food, water, and energy. That we have, for example, adequate amount of electricity to ensure that our na hindi mabubulok yung pagkain sa refrigerator, right? To have this as an extended life. It also brings to surface the importance of supporting each other, supporting your neighbor, your kaingos, your fellow, the person next door, and it is, I think, an opportune time to revisit what bayanihan is really about. And I think the concept has been panning out in PAASE very recently about the word. But we have to, I think, relive and rethink what bayanihan is a concept for advancing resiliency and self-sufficiency in this country. Of course, there is still opportunity and role for international cooperation in terms of most especially thinking about the cure, if not the vaccine for the present pandemic. But I guess going back to the basic, what matters most is, I think, something that has to be elevated in the discourse, not only in practical terms, but also in terms of looking at it from a social perspective. I think there's a bit of mention about epistemic communities earlier. So building new knowledge community on how we can actually elevate the discourse of the Bayanihan spirit and its other parallels in similarly positioned communities in Southeast Asia, such as Thailand or wherever, Taiwan, wherever. I think that there's a great scope for that.
I think to respond to, may I, Dr. Rose? Yeah. To respond to the question also of Ma'am Giselle a little bit earlier, there has to be some kind of activism, right? That we as academics have to be engaged with. If not ourselves, because there are those of us who will not choose that kind of activism, but I think we've got to be engaged in terms of talking to our governments. The shame, for example, it's great that Mayor Belmonte was around, right? But we're looking at Quezon City, right? Now that we're talking about Costales and what Lawrence here is trying to emphasize, we've got to look at, say, let us take the case simply of Panay, right? Are we, is our government actually seriously considering problems of density, population density, right? Is it looking at, the problems of urbanization? Because what we see are, subdivisions sprouting left and right. How much, or how much of our farmlands are actually being protected so that food sustainability within the island itself, when a crisis happens, right, can actually survive. And this is one of the advantages that the islands outside of Manila are resilient. Because I always tell myself, those who will eventually survive are those who plant kamote, right? Because 7-Eleven and Family Mart in Manila, can only give you so much.
That's very true. Yes. Well, thank you very much for your comments, Dr. Delina and Dr. Villanueva. I think that this is a very good kind of way of wrapping up this discussion towards the importance of the interface between non-state actors in addressing more important concerns like food security brought down at the local level. So I think one of the good things, if I can call it that the pandemic has really brought into our consciousness is how, at the end of the day, responses need to be localized. So what happens in Manila is very different from what happens in Iloilo, and really the need to kind of think that as islands, as communities, what we need to work out is really how our very own governments and non-state actors who are locally placed are able to work among themselves to address problems of immediate concerns, whether that be, for instance, how do we get the vegetables, the food towards people who most need them, particularly in the city, given all the disruptions in the supply chain. Second is that, and it was pointed out by Dr. Padilla, how then do we address this issue of repatriates and returning OFWs? And then the imperative of coordination. At the end of the day, the burden goes to the localities who have to accept these repatriates and embed them into their communities with all the quarantine measures that are being required and things like that. And already Dr. Padilla has warned us that this is one of the key dangers of the pandemic erupting yet again because of the upsurge caused by returning repatriates and OFWs. So I think barring any more discussions or questions from the attendees, I am now looking at my attendee panel, and there hasn't seemed to be any raised hands. And looking at the Q&A button, the questions also have been answered. There are some comments also from written in the chat box, particularly from Dr. Edna Ko about the importance of the value chain among stakeholders in ensuring that food is available and to all of the localities. I think that will be the end of our Q&A. I would like to ask the panelists if there are any more questions that you would like to raise at this point. Are there any more questions? Okay. So if there are no more questions, I would like to close the open forum formally and also to thank our speakers. We are now switching screen. In the program, I am tasked to close the session and to also inform our attendees that session 3.3, which is what we just had, is only one of the many lineups of panels and interesting discussion for the 40th PAASE anniversary online meeting and symposium, which will run until the 14th of August. So we invite you, therefore, to visit our website, of PAASE website, for the full lineup of the various panels that are happening simultaneously. Again, from here on until the 14th of August. We are also actively recruiting for PAASE members, and these are just reminders about membership dues for those who haven't done so. I would like to thank again our speakers. I would go through them chronologically. First, Ms. Josie Costales of Costales Nature Farms, thank you very much for gracing us and allowing us to listen more about your farm's initiative in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. To Mayor
Thank you so much.
Belmonte,
Welcome.
yes, thank you, Ma'am. Yes,
Thank you so
Mayor
much din po
Belmonte,
for having
oh,
me.
you're welcome, Ma'am. Thank you for Mayor Belmonte, who we announced earlier, is unable to join us in the Q&A. Thank you very much, Ma'am, for allowing us to listen as well to the initiatives of the Quezon City local government. That also gives us a good picture of some national discussions on responses. And of course, Dr. Patrick Padilla, thank you so much for giving us a picture of what things are at in Iloilo and in Region 6. And of course, Dr. Delina, speaking from Sultan Kudarat, thank you so much for your insights on the self-sufficiency of islands with respect to their energy requirements. And of course, Dr. Kevin Villanueva, who gave us some interesting points to ponder on about the need to enhance the dialogue on COVID-19 response beyond great powers. So it makes us also reflect, how do small states like us, Philippines and Taiwan, able to inform the kind of dialogue onwards on how to move from, let's say, response to developing vaccines and other type of means by which this pandemic could be averted. So we are also giving certificates to our speakers. So I'm just going to flash the certificate and read the citation. You will receive this. It will be emailed to you as an expression of thanks from PAASE. So reading through, the certificate of appreciation is presented to our speaker for delivering their lecture on the 24th of July, 2020 as part of Parallel Session 3.3 during the 40th PAASE anniversary and 2020 annual meeting and symposium held virtually. Signed by Dr. Gisela Concepcion, President of PAASE, and co-host Dr. Edna Ko and myself. So thank you very much. With this, I formally end the session. And again, thank the attendees. Thank my co-host, Dr. Edna Ko, for working with us in putting together this panel and organizing the speakers over the past few weeks.
Thank you too.
Thank you very much, Ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
And
Stay safe,
thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to thank our two technical assistants, Mr. Wilfredo Palete of UP Visayas, as well as Ms. Febri Esclares, who is my research assistant. Thank you so much for providing us invaluable support to carry out this session. So with that, I thank you. Perhaps we would be able to play the PAASE video, Fibri, as a way to finish the session. Please
Hi
stay
everyone.
on.
Be COVID free.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
May I ask the
Bye.
to thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Okay. May we ask our Fibri, okay. Unfortunately, Fibri cannot run the other video. Please wait. We will run the other video that tells the story of PAASE as an organization.
Science and technology and innovation, these are indispensable in the modern economy, in the modern world.
A meeting at the MSI, and we resolved among about 6 to 8 of us, local members, first to form PAASE Philippines so that we could continue to host meetings here, but also to go on a massive campaign to try to get support from the national government through the legislative and executive branches to invest more in science and technology. So it started with a white paper, a position paper that we co-authored among 6 of us, namely Ernie Pernia, Cesar Saloma, Redor Asansa, Toby Dairita Fataneo, and Aldin Colaba de la Sala, and myself.
So PAASE historically, in the past 10, 20 years for sure, have been collaborating with our counterparts here in the Philippines at various universities. And a lot of these interactions probably started as peer-to-peer. But thankfully, we have the Department of Science and Technology here in the Philippines, and they've come up with some really helpful and very impactful programs that actually enable PAASE members that are based in the United States and other parts of the world to actually come here and do extensive research and academic partnerships and collaborations.
Well, I think that one of the good things that PAASE is doing is really trying to stay in touch with the researchers and the scientists here in the Philippines. So I think that is one of the good programs that they keep on supporting some of the initiatives of our researchers and scientists here in the country, trying to align also their assistance towards the plans of the Philippine government.
It's very important that the PAASE members and scientists based in the Philippines are continuously in contact, so we will know the needs of the Filipinos and opportunities that Filipinos can have to do science with their PAASE counterparts. So these interactions, such as conference that we're holding and the annual conferences that we have,
the Philippines and the scientists there have very unique perspective that adds to discoveries and inventions advancing in general the field.
These members, because they are part of an academy, it implies that they are productive. So they have publications, they have innovations, they have inventions, patents, and they have, they have an impact on society. Okay, so these are the people who can convince government, invest more in science and technology. And that was really the gist of our paper, our position paper in 2000. Ernie Pernia, who said that R&D by nature is expensive and it is a public good. So it is important for the government to take the lead in investing in R&D.
To increase the economic growth potential of the country, we cannot continue to just rely on traditional inputs into production as capital and labor. We also need to develop our expertise in science and technology and innovation so that we can come up with new systems, new ways of doing things?
I think that science, researchers, industry, and even the government is really like an ecosystem of knowledge. So I think it doesn't really matter if you're coming from a private institution or a public institution, such as a state university. I think we all have a role to play to improve the research capabilities and scientific knowledge here in the country. I think it is about time for us to realize that one of our roles as academics, as researchers, as scientists, is to actually contribute to that global body of knowledge.
The role of this cooperation among these government agencies really is to be able to attract science and technology, global-based companies to set up shop here. And that is really key in terms of developing the science and technology innovation ecosystem in the country.
Particularly because there's that deep desire. And what PAASE does and can do more of is to promote this relationship between its members.
We really need to ratchet up the appreciation, the recognition of the importance of science and technology and innovation.
And we are all trying to attain what we call the common good, the greater, higher, long-term good of the Filipino people.
With that, we formally close the session. So you may now end the meeting, leave the meeting. Thank you very much.